So, this is POISE, our Sexual Violence Support Group webinar series. And this is our fourth webinar supporting, or also called facilitating. So, like I said, this is our fourth webinar in the series. And this is one of our most anticipated webinars that we're going to be doing in talking about support groups. So I hope that there are a lot of questions that are in the Q&A, and if you all have any questions, have any comments or any knowledge to share, you feel free to do so. We will have one more webinar after this webinar today. So I hope you all will also join us for that last webinar, Evaluate. Kelly Marie is also putting the copy of the slides in the chat for you all. And then she will also be sharing very shortly a link to our YouTube channel so you can access the first three webinars in the series. So here are our objectives for today. First, we're going to outline the roles and qualities of a support group facilitator. After that, we're going to explore ways to structure sexual violence support groups before wrapping up today with developing skills needed to facilitate support groups. Now, if we have time today, we'll be able to do some scenario work and you'll get to hear from the amazing Kelly Marie directly about her experience facilitating a support group. If we don't, you all will have access to a copy of the slides in which you will still be able to see some tips for facilitating and navigating different issues within a support group. So the first part that we're going to go through today is finding our facilitators. What is a facilitator? What's their role? And what should they be doing? This all, again, happens in context about in knowing what a sexual violence support group is. A sexual violence support group is a group that focuses on building skills, social relationships, connections, and growth within a person and within a group of folks who experience sexual violence. The difference between a sexual violence support group and other groups is its emphasis on social skills and relationships. In other states, this might be called a psychoeducational support group, but for us, and for most of today, we'll refer to these as a sexual violence support group. Sexual violence support groups are a core service of sexual violence programs, and so I'm really glad to be able to discuss facilitation with you all today. I wish we could be in person and just spend 5 hours talking about the best way to facilitate, but if you have more questions after the group ends, please feel free to contact me directly, and I'd love to provide some assistance for your efforts. As we move through our webinar today, we will continue to refer back to the information for our mock support group. Now, if you've attended parts 1 through 3, you'll know that in our mock support group, we are working with a group of older women in our community, and our main support group activity is bird watching. So, all of the activities, the structure of our support group that we'll talk about today will focus about and on these main two factors. Additionally, the location for our support group is going to be around town, but it will be most commonly near a park and that has a pond in our community. Near the park and accounting for inclement weather is a coffee shop that, again, if the weather is bad, that's where the group will be held. What is a support group facilitator, right? Kind of self explanatory. They are a person who leads the sexual violence support group. Now, when our movement started, facilitators used to be a person who was interested in providing support for a group of survivors, and they would talk things through that they were dealing with and provide emotional support to each other. Now that our field has become more professionalized, we have some best practices in facilitating support groups and who a facilitator should be. Particularly for Isla, this should be a certified sexual violence advocate. This should be someone who's completed their victim counselor training and the advanced sexual violence training. If you have questions about that process or how to complete it, please contact our training team. Our facilitators should also be knowledgeable about sexual violence, trauma, healing, and support group facilitation. If this is someone's first time being in contact with sexual violence survivors, I would suggest that before they facilitate a group, they go through some type of shadowing process with someone who has those experiences and extensive training before becoming a support group facilitator. Because sexual violence survivors have varied experiences, may experience a variety of how they show distress and respond to their trauma, it is critical that they have this training before becoming a sexual violence support group facilitator. Additionally, if you are a therapist or a therapist is fulfilling the role of a sexual violence support group facilitator, it's important that it's clear which role that they are fulfilling at the moment. Therapists and advocates have two different sets of confidentiality obligations and also training, right? So, therapists are allowed to provide therapeutic interventions for survivors. Advocates, on the other hand, are not allowed to provide therapeutic interventions for sexual violence survivors. Even if you have a therapist who is acting in the role as an advocate, they need to be clear which role they're fulfilling at that time. And for those who are providing sexual violence support group services specifically, they should be fulfilling the role of advocates. What should facilitators be doing, right? When we say these are the roles, what does that look like? A facilitator's main responsibility is to guide the sexual violence support group. Keeping in mind the role of a sexual violence advocate, sexual violence group facilitators know how to provide educational resources, explain our agency policies, actively listen, and maintain confidentiality. Facilitators also know how to lead discussions, draw in participants when needed, and when to ask others to take a step back so that everyone can participate as they wish. They're also really skilled mediators and know the difference between an argument and a discussion and how to facilitate open space where people feel okay to disagree and have a difference of opinion, but still do so in a safe and respectful way. Overall, facilitators are also very skilled communicators. They can easily demonstrate respectful and non aggressive communication, and they can pick up on nonverbal cues, shifts in tone, and body language, and they know how to ask questions to get more understanding. They also know how and when it's necessary to de escalate harmful situations verbally, but they also, again, know the difference between what is a harmful discussion or what is turning into an argument and what is just a difference of opinion. They also know how to intervene when exchanges are becoming harmful and boundaries are being crossed. Because also, as our role as a sexual violence support group facilitator, as a safe person, it's also about respecting the boundaries of everyone within the group. Facilitators are also well versed in their agency policies and procedures and can explain them to survivors. That includes how to access other services that our organization provides, contact information for other advocates and our supervisors within our organizations, and information about our grievance policies. Advocates and specifically support group facilitators are also able to explain our confidentiality obligations and what that means for us, but also for the other people in the group. So now, so now we have our first discussion question for today. The first question is, what are some traits you think a sexual violence support group facilitator should have? What are some traits you think a sexual violence support group facilitator should have? Hi, Mary. I think we're getting some answers in the chat. Would you mind reading that out?
Absolutely. Um, so I see a calm demeanor, knowledgeable, patient, empathy, flexibility, empathy without self disclosure, the ability to lead a conversation and to ask open ended questions, compassion, understanding, and acceptance.
All those answers, especially empathy, compassion, um, ability to lead conversations. Yes, flexibility, absolutely. What else? Knowledge, patience, yes. A calm demeanor, absolutely, right? All of these things impact how we communicate with one another, how we are able to regulate other people, and overall, whether our support group will be a safe and brave space for everyone who is attending to participate. So, thank you all for your answers. And some of what I already have prepared on the slide are some of the things that you all said, right? You talked about flexibility, patience, all those things are critical. Some of the other traits that we identified were they understand how trauma manifests, right? So we know that for some people, they might spend a lot of the group talking about their experience, they're cutting other people off, they're not waiting to listen to the full question. And for some people might say, they're overeager or they're rude. And a support group facilitator might say, this person hasn't had a chance to share their story before. And they might recognize that as a trauma response, right? When someone has to keep silent and then they have an opportunity to share, they might do so in a way that's a little bit unregulated. And a support group is a great place for that to happen. They are willing to learn from others. So they might establish themselves as someone who holds knowledge about sexual violence, but they are not the only person who knows things about navigating trauma, healing, and how to connect with other people. And it's important that even though we're the facilitators and we might be the leads, eventually we should become a collaborator in the group. They are flexible and adaptable. They reflect on their own experiences and belief, and they request support when needed. In particular, being flexible and adaptable, reflecting on our own experiences, and requesting support when needed are critical life skills. And so, if a facilitator is able to model this in our groups, that can be really helpful for survivors to see an example of what that looks like. They also are really good at practicing self care. So, again, making sure that we practice what we preach. We shouldn't be telling survivors or people attending our support groups to take care of themselves, to do what they need to set and maintain boundaries if we're not able to do so in our own lives. So, I know we're on a webinar today, but wherever you are, I would like you to practice saying this phrase out loud. So, I'm going to say a phrase and pause, and then I would like you to repeat after me. Okay? The first part. I am not, nor will I ever be, a perfect facilitator. I am not, nor will I ever be, a perfect facilitator, but I can be a great one. Thank you all for doing that, right? So it's important for us to go ahead, acknowledge that, and get that out of the way. We are not striving to be perfect in our facilitation of the support group. But what we can strive to do is to get better and be the support group facilitator that survivors deserve, right? And part of that is making sure that we take intentional time to practice and develop the traits that are needed to provide a sexual violence support group. Here are some general best practices for support groups as well, right? So, first, it's important that if possible, our sexual violence support group has at least two co facilitators for the group. And that's important for a couple of different reasons. First, if issues arise in the support group, and they will, one facilitator can step away and address the group that situation immediately, while another can stay and maintain the group and keep it going. This also is a way for us to demonstrate in real time what a balanced boundary relationship can look like and what respectful communication can look like for the group. And it also allows each facilitator the opportunity to learn from each other. Another strength of having two facilitators, especially two from different backgrounds, is that they can promote more group variety. Co facilitation models allow for the combining of strengths, built in accountability, and an opportunity to demonstrate role plays and activities with someone who's not a part of the group and won't maybe be as embarrassed or awkward if they're asked to participate. If possible, it should also be the same facilitator for the duration of the group. And that consistency, again, helps strengthen relationships. That means that the same people should be involved in doing the budgeting, doing outreach, calling participants, making flyers, reading evaluations, writing the reports, and everything else that goes into the work of a support group. A facilitation team doesn't just stop at doing the content. It means the work is distributed in a way that stretches our capacity when needed and bolsters our strengths when possible. And if possible, we want to consider having a multi generational team and a multi gender team, again, to demonstrate a safe relationship and effective communication amongst those who are different as a part of our group. Now, for our sexual violence support group, while we're doing birding as our main activity with older adult women, we might consider having two facilitators who are women facilitate the group, right? Because that is, again, responsive to our target population. Also, it's important to note that we know, it's particularly in rural and smaller programs, it might be difficult to have two dedicated staff who are able to be facilitators for a sexual violence support group. So this is why we highly, highly, highly encourage you all to have volunteers who are able to maybe um, facilitate your support group alongside a paid staff member. Again, this can help accommodate for staff capacity and find a way for volunteers in our community to engage in a very specific way. Beyond having training and facilitation, facilitators who are not paid sexual violence advocates should still be trained in basic advocacy skills. Facilitators also should know how to maintain clear boundaries with participants. So, beyond our own professional and personal boundaries, our agencies should be providing some directions on things such as giving and receiving gifts, transporting participants, and also giving out your personal contact information. The group should also set their own boundaries about these things as well, especially when working with sexual violence survivors. Facilitators want to look for ways to demonstrate boundaries and asking for consent. For example, a facilitator might err on the side of caution when it comes to touching participants, right? That might be something that they don't do. But once they're giving explicit consent, they might know it is okay to give a light shoulder touch. Again, this only comes when we explicitly ask for consent. Now, when it comes to disclosing your own personal history, the best practice is to use discretion unless your agency policy dictates otherwise. Now, disclosing your personal history might allow for survivors to find that sameness, which might make them feel more comfortable in sharing. So, someone might say, as a facilitator, yes, I've experienced sexual violence. That would be the extent that I would go because, again, the point of a sexual violence support group as a facilitator is not to find comfort and safety for yourself. It is to be able to provide that to the participants. But letting them know that you've also experienced something similar, if you have, might help them connect better with you as a facilitator. It might also help take away some of the shame and secrecy about being a survivor if you are the first person to model that. Again, this is not something that you have or need to do, but if you feel like it's appropriate for the group, consider it. This, again, also comes with the caveat that facilitators need to be aware of their own emotions and remain emotionally separate from the group. They must remain professional and be a calm and regulated support person and not seek emotional support for their own trauma during the group. We need to have other resources outside of the group to be able to seek that support. All right, our next discussion question. What are some key factors you think support group facilitators should discuss together before doing a group? What are some key factors you think support group facilitators should discuss together before facilitating a group?
All right, Lashae, some answers are starting to come in. So I see resources, support, and understanding how it affects everyone.
When we say resources and support, what type of resources and support? I love those answers. Just looking for a little bit more context. What kind? Looks like folks are still thinking. So let's keep going. And I will very rarely ask you a question and then never provide you with the context or some answer.
Mhm. And we did get one more response in the chat, and that's how to navigate who will lead what parts of the itinerary.
Absolutely, right? Having a discussion about are you doing this part? Is Kelly Marie going to do our introductions while I'm still setting up the activities? Those are important things to think about. So, here are some key things that facilitators should discuss before facilitating a group together. So, on our left side, we have some we have the big picture admin and logistics, right? The just in case things that we need to talk about. On the right side, we have how to actually do the facilitation. So some things might be division of administrative and logistical tasks, preparing for group sessions, communication in case of an emergency, how to moderate the group together, how to mediate conflicts, facilitator triggers, how we're going to keep time in the group, and how to approach some complex topics. So, for example, one topic that we might talk about in the group is navigating sexual violence within families. This topic in particular can bring up a lot of emotions because people have varied experiences and they might have different ties to the people that they're related to. So, before we facilitate that topic in particular, your facilitation team might want to talk about, okay, how are we going to break up the questions? What questions should we ask? How much time do we spend doing grounding before and after the discussion we're going to have? All of these things that could affect how the group flows. Now, in an ideal world, all of these things will line up seamlessly. But in reality, most teams will have to work at this to make it flow well and in a way that is supportive of the entire group's needs. And that's okay. Any relationship that's worth having takes work, and that includes facilitating a support group with another person. For you to be able to adjust to the way each other does things, how you think, and what you are and are not comfortable with will take time, intentionality, intentionality, and grace from each other as well. And most importantly, we want to make sure that we're wanting to do it better for survivors. So here's our first example of how our facilitator duo is navigating this situation. Our two facilitators for the support group, Jordan and Kai, have decided to meet 2 months before the group begins to finalize the details. They have decided to meet for an hour a week, every week before the launch date, to finalize the first 4 sessions of 8 and discuss their facilitation styles. While they have worked on projects before, they have not co facilitated a group before. Some of the key factors that they discuss were the willingness to spend extended periods outside, conducting research on local birds, and taking turns transporting the group attendees. So, for this example, we can see how Kai and Jordan are being intentional about the support group. They took time out of their schedule to fine tune the group details, and they were meeting weekly to make sure that they discussed their facilitation styles. And they talked about different factors that would impact the group. Specifically, they talked about the support group's main activity and how that impacts the burning that they might do. Now, for your support group, you may not need to talk about research or think about doing research on local birds. But what you might need to do is figure out when the local basketball team is in the gym that is across the room from the support group that you're doing. This could affect people's anonymity in attending the group. It can affect the noise level in doing the group. And so all of these things are things that should be discussed as a team with your group of facilitators. Okay, so we are about at our midway point. So I want to stop to make sure that if there are any questions that have come up so far, we're taking time to answer them.
So far, there's nothing in the Q&A, but if folks have midway point questions they want to ask in the chat, that would also be an okay place to do that.
It doesn't seem like we have any, but if you do at any point, please make sure that you put it in the chat or in the Q&A so we can answer your questions. So now let's think about facilitating the individual sessions, right? Before we get to this point, we should have already planned our group from doing outreach to completing our evaluations, conducted the initial outreach for the group, and develop relationships in the community, completed intakes for participants, and selected our group participants. So the last two steps that I mentioned specifically, which are planning our conducting our initial outreach, conducting intakes, and selecting group participants, need to be conducted by the support group facilitators. And this helps already establish us as a standard figure in our sexual violence support group. Additionally, facilitators need to be aware of issues and gaps that could impact survivors' participation in the group. Now, many of the individual survivors' gaps and things that might impact their participation were probably already discussed and discovered during the intake. But there are still other external factors that can impact survivors' participation that are beyond their control. So, the location. This can include the security and location maintenance. So, for example, if we are doing our sexual violence support group outside at a park, there is likely not a lot of cleanup that we're going to have to do and doing our birding. But if we are making bird seed in the kitchen of the coffee shop that we are doing our sexual violence support group, we might have to think about that timing and cleaning up, and if there's allergies to peanut butter and making our bird seed, right? All these things that could impact the security and the safety of the participants that we're working with. We also want to think of the utility of our space, depending on our group size, the activity, mobility, and etc. So, a park might be great for people who are able to walk very easily, they have no trouble walking. But if the park hasn't been maintained very well, there's cracks in the sidewalk, or there is no sidewalk, and particularly for our support group, who is focused in targeting older women, if someone uses a mobility aid, that might not be a great place to do it. So we might have to pick a particular part of the park to do our support group, right? Because that would allow them to be able to participate as they want to. We also want to think about the date and time. So again, going back to our example, we may not want to do our sexual violence support group at night because there's likely less birds that we'll be able to see, and the binoculars that we have for our group probably won't be as useful. We also want to make sure that we're considering the needs of our participants. So, making sure that they have the logistical information, that they have transportation, that they have childcare if that's needed, and we're aware of any health concerns that could impact their ability to attend the group. In particular, for transportation and childcare, this could be another way that we have volunteers engage with our support group if they are not quite ready to be the facilitators. So, just thinking about what are support that we need to be able to facilitate the group, and how might someone else outside of the facilitators be able to meet that need. So, here are our three support group stages. Now, this is again for the whole life cycle of a group. So, when we start the group to when the group ends. If you were doing an open group that has a rolling registration, there is no in for the group inside. This will be instead for individual participants as they move through the life cycle of the group. But if you're doing a group that is, say, 8 sessions long, then this is kind of the standard process that the group goes to in order to facilitate an intentional support group process. So here are the three stages. First, we have the stage of forming. And this is when the group initially comes together and they're getting to know each other and becoming comfortable being a group. Next, we have the norming and performing stage. And in this phase, we figure out how we are and who our identity is as a group, but as individuals as well in our healing process. And then lastly, we have the adjourning phase. And this is when the group transitions and the group ends. So the focus of this last piece is to make sure that people have the resources to maintain um, and keep going in their healing journey after the group has ended. Now, you'll notice that this is in the shape of an upside down triangle. That's because the vast majority of a person's time spent in a group is spent in that first stage, right? Getting familiar, overcoming awkwardness, and becoming comfortable with doing self reflection, with sharing, asking questions, and making relationships with the other people in the group. So let's break down those phases a little bit more. Our first stage is forming the group, and that's stage one. This is when the group initially comes together and the group members are getting to know each other. So during this time period, facilitator participants learn about each other in the group. They become familiar with the guidelines and agreements, and they become familiar with the other group members. Now, to make sure that you are as successful as you can be, we have shared some sample group agreements that you can use in your support group in the chat. The group also works to set some agreements and agree on some goals. And there's an emphasis on establishing trust and relationships with everyone in the group. This stage typically spans 3 to 5 sessions, and it's crucial that the facilitators build trust not only with the participants, but amongst the group during this stage. Especially in rural communities, the participants may be familiar with each other in some way, and it's important that the expectations around confidentiality and safety are set very early on. During this stage, there will be time spending a lot of time spent introducing themselves to the group, building trust, and making group norms, what is okay and what's not okay in the group. Developing group agreements and familiarizing group members with our agency policies and procedures, encouraging group members to communicate and get to know each other, acknowledging that there might be some awkwardness and uncomfortability in that process, being conscious of modeling healthy behaviors and communication, and identifying individual group members' goals for the group, and doing some focus on confidentiality. During this phase, facilitators will be more active in leading and starting discussions and frequently finding places and building in spaces for participants to connect and find commonalities within their lives. The facilitators will also spend time giving heavy reassurance and encouragement for the participants to share. Additionally, because the group is going to be new, facilitators will do a lot of reminding and gentle prompting as the norm of the group are still being set. Now, we're also going to make sure for each of these stages, there's some tips that follow them. So, we want to make sure that there are lots of activities that have opportunities for people to share and gain information. So, these can be check in questions and activities like participant bingo, and those kind of things are really good for this part. It might also be helpful for facilitators to frequently have the participants partner with someone new in each activity to build trust more uniformly across the group and not just with one person. We also want to make sure that, especially during these first couple of sessions, we're reviewing the group agreements at every meeting and we're giving relevant examples that shift with time. We also want to make sure that during these first couple groups, we're depending on our co facilitator to do demonstrations and act as a model, right? Because there's newness. We don't want people to feel like if I don't get the answer right, then I'm going to be embarrassed. We want to make sure that for the first couple of times, our co facilitator is the one that we're calling on to use as an example during the group. Another thing that I would encourage facilitators to do is to make sure that we are often revisiting the goals of a support group. This could look like the prompt that is on the screen, the last prompt, which is, why are we here and why are you here? When participants are constantly being asked this question, it can help them do a couple of things. First, it helps them come back to where they are in the present moment and be in tune with what's going on with the whole group. Second, it can help them refocus on the collective goal and purpose of the support group, which is to make connections, grow, and learn. And then third, it also established that each person could have different priorities and experiences and still coexist despite having different backgrounds, but similar experiences. So, one way that I might facilitate this prompt is to say and ask the whole group, why are we here? Listen to the answers, listen for people say, and then again reestablish we're all here to grow, to learn, to heal, right? That's the purpose of the sexual violence support group. And then I might go around and ask each individual, why are you here? Making sure to listen to the answers that they give and then say, it's okay for us to all have different experiences and different priorities for being here, but we're all really here for a couple of key reasons, right? Making sure to reestablish the need and the focus and the purpose of a support group. Stage two is when the participants start becoming more comfortable around each other and start to form a group identity. So, this is when facilitators can start to shift from being more of that teacher role to more of a guide or a collaborator within the group. This is also the stage where some conflicts might arise in the group as each person learns from each other. During this stage, facilitators should focus on encouraging participants to explore ways of coping and developing those mutual supports within the group, supporting survivors and sharing their experiences, whether that is doing some self reflection or doing so in small groups or doing so in front of the whole group, observing and acknowledging when survivors model different things, right? So saying, I really like how Kelly Marie used I statements there. That's really helpful in making sure that we're only talking about our experiences and understanding that our experience is not the only experience. We want to make sure we're spending time reminding and refocusing the group on the established group goals and norms, and we're still taking time to nurture group cohesion. It's also important during this stage that facilitators encourage participation of all group members, and we're being careful not to allow individual participants to control or dominate the group. Facilitators might want to start with something like, and start saying things like, this is your group. What would you all like to do? Or, I have these options available. We can do this or that. What would you like? So, survivors can start to practice flexing their agency in a way that won't have dire consequences for them. We want to make sure that we're doing that in a small way. And so, when they're outside of the group, they'll feel more comfortable making decisions and sticking to those decisions despite pressure. Also, by this point in the group and near the end of stage two, this is where we might start to focus more on the learning and growing within our support group. Now, developing connections is still going to be a focus, but by this time, the group should start spending more time learning new skills and having discussions. If the group is short term, the majority of the session will be in that first stage, but the next most important part is in this stage, stage two. So here are some things for norming and performing in our second stage. We want to make sure that we are finding intentional ways for participants to take ownership over the group. And this includes things like reading instructions, helping set up and clean up for the group, helping give demonstrations, reading the questions or discussion points that we're talking about. We want to make sure that we're taking time to intentionally name behaviors and observations that are happening within the group. So I noticed Kelly Marie is doing a lot of writing in her journal right now. Kelly Marie, do you want to share some of the things that are coming up for you? We want to ask individual participants to engage and disengage when needed, and invite participants to choose from a short list of topics. Now, during this stage, it might be more appropriate to start asking people, do we have someone who wants to volunteer to start reading our group agreements? But by this point, and this is around between our fourth and eighth session, participants should start to expect that they may be called upon to give their input or to participate. Particularly if we're doing this last point, inviting participants to choose from a short list of topics, this might involve more prep on the facilitator's side. So we might need to prepare two activities or two agendas for the group, but it is worth it to be for survivors to be able to start to flex those decision making skills. And then stage three is when the group is starting to transition to a close. So by this point, the group attendees should feel some ownership over the group and have learned some things and observed some changes in themselves and in the group as a whole from where it started. This third stage will generally begin a couple of weeks or sessions before the group officially closes, and this might be difficult for survivors who have come to rely on the group as a place of constant support, safety, and comfort. It's normal for people to experience some grief or feelings of loss, particularly in a well-formed group. It's important that facilitators make room to acknowledge these feelings and to focus and do activities that help transition and navigate closure in the end of the group. So during this closing stage, it'll be critical for facilitators to be able to acknowledge potential feelings of loss and grief from participants and not try to hide that feeling away, to plan activities that focus on transitioning out of the group, uplift changes participants have made throughout the group, and assist them in finding additional resources and referrals for support. We want to establish that just because the group is ending or that they're leaving the group does not mean that their progress or what they're doing for their healing has to stop. Now, if the group that we're doing is a role has a rolling enrollment or it's open, right? There's not a set end date. It might not be a whole group of people ending the group at once. It might be one individual who's transitioning out, or the facilitators might feel like it's time for them to find other supports outside of the group. If this is the case, facilitators should make sure to talk to the participants about their thoughts in their transition, answer any questions that they might have, and give them specific support resources outside of the group. Again, the point of a sexual violence support group is for people to grow, connect, and learn. And so if someone gets to the point where they are not connecting or they're not learning anymore, and instead are only finding support in the group, that's great. And support might need to be found in another way. So here's some tips for stage three. We want to take time in the group to brainstorm external support, right? So we don't want to just hand people one list of papers and say, these are some other hotlines that you can call. Thanks for coming to the group. We appreciate you. Goodbye. We want to take time within the group to find, for them to think about who and where can they find places of support in the community. When this is a brainstorm, it feels more personable and it allows survivors to engage in a way that is relevant to them. We also want to discuss confidentiality after the group ends. So if you see myself in the grocery store as a facilitator, how do we want to navigate that situation? You should have some guidance already from your agencies provided, but that should also be something that you discuss in your group. And it also might be helpful to give a memento for participants to keep. Now, what this looks like is going to have to be relevant to your community and to your support group budgets, but we'll give an example in the next slide about what this could look like. The adjourning or ending stage is going to be really important because it can help demonstrate to survivors that they can have an ending that, yes, is sad and final, but it doesn't have to necessarily be traumatic. It can even be done as a celebration of the journey and the progress that they've made. Part of the trauma for some people of sexual violence is that things have changed so abruptly and violently without warning and without time to adjust to their new reality. This can generate feelings of grief, anxiety, confusion, and anger. So, when done intentionally and keeping in mind the trauma of that abrupt change, ending the group doesn't have to be this way. If we prepare survivors of what's to come, help them with tools to respond, and help them navigate what this might feel like when these situations happen. So, one activity that I have done, not in a support group setting, but in another setting where a group had ended, was we took time to practice ending our journey. So, the activity went like this: each person was able to go up to a partner, look them in their eye, and say, "Thank you." So, in this case, it'll be a support group. "Thank you for attending the group with me. Our time has now ended. Thank you." Then they looked in their eyes, gave it a moment, turned around, paused, and then walked away from them. Right? So, and then they practiced saying that to each other. So there was an intentional time to acknowledge what happened, give gratitude, and to see that person leaving the space. There was feelings of sadness. There was feelings, some feelings of anxiety of when that happened. But practicing helped people know how it would feel in their bodies and prepare for what it would feel like in reality once the group was over. This could be something that you also do and part of ending your group. All right, so now we have an example of what, again, the ending could look like and intentionally ending your group could look like. During the final 3 sessions of a 10-session group, Jordan and Kai made space for the participants to have discussions about grief, letting go, and closure. Jordan and Kai also scheduled a check in with each of the participants 2 weeks after the group ended. The participants chose whether they would like to check in virtually, in person, or over the phone. As a parting gift, each of the participants received a teal bird pen and a set of binoculars. Now, in this example, we see that the facilitators made time to intentionally address feelings, provide the survivors with individual support outside of the group, and gave a memento that doesn't necessarily associate the person with the group. They also demonstrated active listening and choice points by responding to how a survivor wanted to do their check in after the group had ended. So now we're going to focus on the individual structures of the group, right? So, like, if you had to make an agenda, what might it look like? So, generally, when we're thinking about setting up a group, typical group cycles are between 8 to 16 sessions. 8 is kind of on the short end, and 16 is kind of on the long end, right? Again, and this is if you were having a closed uh, group that's usually based on a curriculum. If you're doing an open group, you'll have a variety of topics that you can choose from and continue to do, but this is the typical cycle. Each individual session is between 1 and 2 hours, and the best for adult learning, it's said that after 60 minutes, adults have a hard time paying attention. So if you're going to be doing a longer group, just make sure that you're offering breaks and opportunities for people to move their bodies in your space. We also want to take time to, again, intentionally ensure confidentiality agreements are understood and taken seriously and each group that we're doing. That includes taking time to discuss what that looks like practically for the facilitators and within the group, what to do if group members see each other in person, and what to happen if a breach of confidentiality happens within the group, and As facilitators, we want to plan for our response to a breach. So within the individual sessions, facilitators should be helping and encouraging the exchange of information. Again, that can be through formal things like worksheets and readings, but can also be with participants sharing their stories back and forth. Providing a space for survivors to give and receive support, promoting group cohesion, assisting survivors with skills and awareness of their resiliency, create a safe space for the reduction of being isolated, right? Helping people connect with others, model how to reduce and manage stress, and creating and promoting group safety. Now, when we say safety, we don't just mean your body is physically safe where you're at. Nothing is going to fall on you or hurt you. We're talking about all types of ways that people want to feel safe. That is emotional, that is spiritual, that is physical, all the different ways. And in that, facilitators need to make sure that we're modeling how to provide clear and concise communication, how we can do empathetic and active listening, outlining choices and decisions in a variety of ways that respond to the group's communication styles, being proactive and responsive with our communication, being grounded and regulated. And that means, again, when something's happening that might activate us, what tools are we using to stay in the present moment and be able to navigate the group? If we're not able to do so, how have we planned with our co facilitator to be able to navigate when these situations happen? And providing respectful and consistent communication as well. So you'll see three of the three of the different points on this slide are about communication. And we already talked about this a little bit earlier, but to be able to be a support group facilitator, you have to be a skilled communicator in a variety of different ways. And in each different session, we should provide opportunities to connect with for the survivors to connect with one another, to gain insight about themselves, to practice new skills, to discuss their experiences, and learn new information and have more resources. So this might not happen in the same way every time, and you might not be able to do each of these things every time. But if you are trying to think about what are some things and elements that should be a part of every session and support group, these are the five. Also, if we want to use these particular things to be metrics in our evaluation, that can also be helpful. So it could be during today's session, were you able to connect with others, gain insight about yourself, practice new skills, discuss your experience, and learn new information and find more resources, right? Part of what we should be evaluating for our group is, did the group meet its goals or did the individual session meet its goals, depending on when you're doing the evaluation? Overall, did we provide opportunities for the participants to grow, learn, and connect? And then from there, we can aggregate more data or ask more questions and then form our evaluation. So here's also a suggested session structure for each group. So someone a little earlier talked about the itinerary, and this is what it could look like. Now, this came directly from the Circle of Hope, which is quoted on the slide. So if you're like, I want to see more descriptions of each of those, that resource is provided there. They are going to be having the goal of a session, doing a check-in, providing any handouts or doing any learning and discussions, doing an activity, providing opportunity for self-care, checking out, and then giving resources. Now, you are going to want a session structure that is malleable, but it's predictable, kind of like a rubber band, right? It can stretch and it can grow. We'll be asking survivors to stretch and grow, but we don't want to break their boundaries or forego their needs. We want to have a structure that is responsive to what the group needs, but also stable and dependable, yet flexible and responsive to what the reality is that's happening within the group. It also needs to reset to the back to the structure that was established in the next session. So now we're going to go through examples of what each of those different pieces could look like. Hello, my name is Jordan, and this is Kai. We work at the Sexual Violence Healing Center. Before we get started, did everyone sign in? Wonderful. Signing in helps our funders verify that people are coming to the group. We won't share any names, and the sign in sheets are kept in a secure place. As a reminder, we want to make sure everyone understands our confidentiality policies. These are part of how we respect each other and keep each other safe. Would anyone like to help us read our group agreements? So, in this introduction, we have introduced ourselves and established who we are, making sure that people are following the norms of the group, which include signing in, and providing people a reminder of our confidentiality policies and the purpose of them. We're also inviting people to engage with us and read our group agreements. Again, this is part of finding different ways that survivors can engage in the group. Next up, we have our sharing, learning, and reflection. So this is where the majority of our time should be spent doing, and participants being able to share, learn, and reflect together. And even if those things look differently, there should be opportunities for that to exist within the group. We might say, does anyone have anything they want to share with the group? You can share as much or as little as you would like. Does anyone have anything to say in response to what was just shared? Thank you for sharing. What does anyone else think? How about someone who hasn't shared yet? So, in these different responses, we're making opportunities to share, we're asking people to engage, and we're making a point to have new people to engage and other people to disengage, depending on who's already shared within our group. Sometimes people who are eager to share or people who like to observe will stay in kind of those spaces what they're comfortable with. Again, part of the point of a support group is to learn. And so that might mean asking someone to engage differently than what they're comfortable with, but not in a way that's unsafe. Another part of that learning and reflection is making space for that change, that growth, and that reflection. This might sound like, did everyone hear what was shared? I think that's important because I don't think your groupmate was done sharing. Can you hold that thought for a moment and let us come back to you? Again, this is a way to gently redirect and to observe a behavior and maintain that everyone in our group has the right to share, right? Making sure that we're reestablishing those group norms in a direct but gentle way. I'd like us to take a pause and revisit our group agreements. I'm noticing that there seems to be some tension. Why don't we all go around and say how we're feeling? Let's take a breath together. So, in particular, these last three phrases are demonstrating that we are okay taking a break, making a pause, and that we're able to assess what's going on and directly address it as well, right? Doesn't have to be rude, doesn't have to be abrupt, but making sure that this space and continuing to have a space that is safe and brave for everyone. Yes, we want everyone to be able to share, and we want people to also feel respected and connected to other people in the group. And that can only happen if we all feel like we're able to share. We don't feel like that if someone's continuously being interrupted or is not maintaining our group norms. Another part of our group is doing some type of activity. So this is going to be different depending on what kind of group that you do. So for example, for our bird watching group, we're probably not going to be watching a lot of videos if we're outside. But if we're inside at the coffee shop, I might send the group a 2-minute video beforehand that will be a main discussion point for our group. Some other activities could be planned discussions, journal reflections, short videos that are followed up by a group discussion, making some type of art or creating something, practicing scenarios, creating and reciting affirmations, and practicing grounding activities. So, Kelly Marie has put in 2 different resources that you can use in the chat as a handout and a worksheet during support groups if you'd like, that we created at the Resource Sharing Project. But again, whatever activity that you are going to want to do is going to need to be responsive to the needs of your community and the needs within your group. I'll also, later on in the presentation, there'll be a list of different topics that you can choose from for your groups. And there's a lot of them. So you can create lesson plans from each of those different ones. I wanted to also make sure that I took the time to give you all an example of what an activity could look like within a group. So one activity that I have used and during a sexual violence training is an activity with blocks. Now, I use large outdoor Jenga blocks. It doesn't have to be that. You can use small Jenga blocks. Any type of block that stacks will work. In that activity, you will give the instructions such as this. From this point forward, there will be no talking, and I will not be answering any questions. The goal of the activity is to make a structure of some type using these blocks. Then as the facilitator, you let the group go forward and making sure that you do not answer any questions and that there is no talking during the group. Quickly, what will happen is that there will be certain observations. People will try to communicate. They will, some people will hang back. Some people will go and lift one block. Some people won't follow the directions at all. The point of this activity is to establish that in order for there to be a shared goal or to achieve a shared goal, there has to be some type of communication about what the goal is, the roles, understand people's motivations, so on and so forth. That point of that activity is to focus on communication and to be able to establish and to verbalize your boundaries is a key part of navigating life and healing from sexual violence. So, there's lots of different activities that you all can pull from and choose from that don't take a lot of money or effort to prepare. And if you have any more questions about that activity, please feel free to contact me and we can talk more about it. And then we also want to take time to meaningfully end each session. So let's take some time to recap what we talked about today. Remember that even when you leave here today, you are not alone. Here are some other resources that you can look up or use during the week. Feel free to tell us about how you liked it during the next group. Also, know that you can reach out to our program if you need to get a hold of us. Here is that number that you can contact any advocate, a part of our program again. So in this example, we can see that they're taking time to remind that they are establishing that there are other supports available, giving them additional resources, and making sure that they know how to receive support outside of the group. And these are all going to be important things that we do in ending our group sessions. We also want to make sure that when we're ending our group session, we're providing some type of preview for the next week. So if they need to bring anything, or if anything, or if there is any type of change, we're providing that context at the end of every group and following up with that in additional communication. We also know that for some sexual violence support groups, people may not be able to physically take things home. So, what we might want to do during our first group session, especially, is find out a way to store the things that survivors might need during the group. That might be at the space where we're doing the group or at our office, or it might be in bags if it's small enough. But we just want to be conscious that people might not be able to take physically take away things from the group. And so here's some other helpful skills that we want to make sure that we are practicing and using as facilitators. We want to make sure that we're able to paraphrase and that we're making room for silence. So you might say something like, I'm okay with silence. I know people might need time to think and process about what just happened. And then making sure that we are actually holding space for that. We want to make sure that we're building on past successes and then validating and providing encouragement. Kelly Marie, I like that you shared first today. I really appreciate it. That allowed us to get this conversation started. We want to make sure that we're able to clarify and check in. We're able to reframe what's happening. It seems I know that you said it seems like um Kelly Marie is doing X. What I observed her doing was doing this instead, right? Making sure that we're able to put everything into context without judgment, that we're able to mirror the behavior and the terms that are used by the participants as appropriate. We're able to question things with curiosity. We want to make sure that we're normalizing and prioritizing the goals and the safety of the participants, but also the purpose of the support group. We want to address blame and shame. I heard you say that it's your fault that you ex- that you experience what happened to you. I don't think that's true. I think the fault belongs with the person who sexually harmed you. And we want to make sure that we're addressing physiological responses. I heard you feel a lot of anxiety and you know that when something happens, you're going to freeze. That's normal for sexual violence survivors. Freezing is one of those responses that our body does to keep ourselves safe. We don't get to choose what we do. So here are some general tips for individual facilitator sessions as well. We want to make space for the participants to contribute to the theme, topics, and activities when possible, right? So that means we might come in and say, we have two ideas for group today. We can do this or we can do that. Which one would you all like to do? We still have the work of preparing it, but they still have the decision in what happens within the space. We want to make sure that we're reminding the group of our role and consistently asking for input and feedback and applying the feedback as appropriate when it's given. We also want to think about the feasibility and space for activities, products, and materials needed for the group and make sure that we're distributing information and directions in ways that people can intake it. So that might means we need to give written directions, we need to demonstrate the directions, and we need to say the directions out loud, right? Just making sure that we are engaging the participants in the way that they best learn. All right. And I didn't want to end a webinar about facilitation without giving you all different topics to choose from. If you want help in developing a lesson plan or an agenda for your support group for any of these topics, feel free to contact me and we can talk about and develop that out more for you all. Okay. And with that, we do have time today to do some scenario work around our sexual violence support groups. So we're going to do three different scenarios, and I am inviting you all to put your answers in the chat as a response to the prompt. As a reminder, we want to be trauma informed and think about all the ways that we can communicate with people in our responses. So, our first scenario, Darla is new to coming to our sexual violence support group. During her second session, she interrupts others and judges another participant when they share how they coped with losing their jobs. So, what are some things that you can do in your response as a facilitator? What are some things you could do? What are some of the things that you could say? Darla is new to coming to your group. During her second session, she interrupts others and judges another participant when they share how they coped with losing their job. What are some things that you could say? What are some things that you could do? Okay, looks like we might not be too sure, so I'm going to go ahead and display the answer. Oh, someone said, reiterate the group discussion guidelines to be conscious and courteous of others who would like to participate. Absolutely. I think that's a great thing to try. Thank you. Yeah, and that's literally what I thought we should be doing too, right? We want to reiterate our group agreements. We want to validate and redirect. Thank you for being so ready, Darla, to share. But I don't think that they were done. That they were done sharing, and have a one-on-one conversation if the behavior continues. For me, it sounds like Darla might be really excited, but we also want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable and they're able to share, and that this is reestablishing that this is a non-judgmental space. Our next scenario: Estella has been coming to your group for some time. When a new participant tries to join her and her friends during an activity, they ignore the other woman. What are some what are some things that you would say or do in your response? Estella has been coming to your group for some time now. When a new participant tries to join her and her friends during an activity, they ignore the other woman. What are some things that you might say and do? Okay, Kelly Marie, do you have any insight of what you might say and do in this situation?
Yeah, sure. This is definitely something that would happen to me a lot when we were doing those more open support groups. One of the reasons I think we shifted to doing some of the more closed ones, but I think for me, the first thing that I would do is kind of assess um, where we were in that moment and if the participant who was trying to join like was really trying to join, or if by the time I caught it she had already shut down a little bit and wasn't interested. If she was really actively trying to join, I might move physically over towards that area and say, oh, it looks like lashae is really trying to participate with you all, can you back up and make space for her? So I might be directed that way. Or if I had kind of in the moment assessed that lashae was feeling more like she didn't want that kind of direct intervention, I might offer to partner with lashae myself or ask my co-facilitator to partner with lashae and then address the participants who have been coming for some time separately after, um, to talk about how important it is that they be welcoming to new folks.
I think what you verbalizes a lot of the things that I kind of summarized here, right? Name the behavior that's observed. Um, ask questions to Estella about the experience, like, oh, did you see that Kelly Marie was coming up behind you? I think she wanted to join. If the behavior continues, right? reiterating the purpose of our group. We come here so everyone has a chance to share and connect, and making sure that we're checking with the other participant to see how that, if at all, how that affected them, or or indicate in some way for Kelly Marie to do that so I can continue facilitating the activity. All right. And this one is specifically for you, Kelly Marie, because I think it's nuanced. And so I really love to hear your insight. But if other people have things to share, please feel free to put that in the chat and I'll read it out loud. Facil- Felicity and Farah became friends while attending the group. One week, you notice that they did not arrive together and sat far apart from each other. During the break, you'll overhear Felicity tell three other participants that Farah is a backstabber and a liar. So, Kelly Marie, how
Yeah.
might you have, and if you have, navigated something similar?
Yeah, I definitely have. I think one of the really good things that happens in support group is that people form connections and then they see each other outside of group, because we all know that as advocates we can't and shouldn't try to be everything to the survivors that we're working with. And so it's good for them to develop those connections. And sometimes, just like we all get in fights with our friends, sometimes that happens between people who met in group too. And so I can think of one specific situation, and there were several, but there's one that comes to mind particularly, where one participant was watching another participant's children, and then something happened that caused problems in our group. And so I appreciate you making this scenario a little bit easier in that we overheard it at a break instead of it happening, full on in the group. Um, but at a break, I think that's something that I'm going to attend to right away, and either go myself or let my co-facilitator know that I'm gonna step away and try to pull Felicity to the side, and we may or may not make it back before the break. Um, and so then I'm going to just go and say, hey, Felicity, I'm not going to call her out right in front of those people in that moment, but I'm going to say, hey, I wanted to chat with you about something. Do you have a minute? And then bring her to a separate area and say, I heard what was happening. Can you tell me about what's going on? Give her a chance to speak. And then reiterate that whatever's happening outside of the group, that we can talk about that in individual sessions. Like, those are things that I'm here to provide support for her about, but that everybody's coming to the group for the same reason, to get support. And so even though she and her friend are having an interpersonal problem, that we can't have that come into the group, and kind of talk through, and maybe do some role playing of how we might be able to move through that. And then I think that there's also going to have to be some intervention with the people that Felicity was talking to, so that they're not, for lack of a better word, kind of poisoned against this other participant, and we can get some group cohesion coming back together again.
Making sure to address the behavior, um, talk about what is and what is not acceptable in the safety for our group, and making sure that everyone understands that was involved, understands what's going on, are going to be really important things that we do. Again, not necessarily being mean, not being rude, but still being direct, because we are responsible for the safety and the group cohesion of our support group. And with that, we are right on time. Are there any questions that people might have uh, today?
And I am not seeing anything in the Q&A at all. So if you did put something in the Q&A and it's just not showing up for us, if you could re-put that into the chat, that would be super helpful. Thanks.
Okay. Well, if you have any questions, my contact information is on the slide. I appreciate it so much. Kelly Marie is going to put information for how to access the other 3 webinars in the series and how to access the evaluation. Thank you all so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.